Welcome back to World-Beater Wrestling. Today we are talking about the ever-sacred hierarchy of pro wrestling. I think for the longest time, one of the biggest issues of independent wrestling is a lack of direction. In some places, you have too many wrestlers, too many matches, very little direction when it comes to the nitty-gritty of each match. And essentially what you have is something that might look completely incredible on paper, but becomes overbearing in execution. Now, the hierarchy of pro wrestling, quite simply, are the things you should prioritize when you make any decision in pro wrestling, but more specifically, the decisions you make when putting your matches together. And look, I've briefly mentioned the hierarchy before in previous videos and blogs. There's always a couple people who question it. So I'm going to go through exactly what each step of the hierarchy entails and why I think that this is the best way to think about professional wrestling as a whole. Firstly, we have industry, and right underneath we have promotion, with industry being of the utmost importance. Now, I know at the independent level, a lot of you will be thinking, how does my match have any bearing on the industry as a whole? But what I'm generally referring to here is the state of professional wrestling in your area. Now, that could be in a city, it could be in a state or territory, it could be in a country as a whole. I don't feel like this is as much of an issue anymore, but I know that when I was first starting out, kind of prior to the age of the internet, to the information age, the only real way to get your name out as a promotion, as a brand, was to put out flyers, to be in the local newspapers, and most importantly, word of mouth. Now, there wasn't many wrestling promotions around, so if one promotion came in and they weren't running professionally, they weren't putting on a show that was professional, it wasn't like people were saying, hey, we're never going to go back to that BWF show again. Completely made those letters up, not real. Don't get hot at me if you are from BWF. But they would say, we aren't going to go watch Australian pro wrestling again, because this is what everything in Australian pro wrestling must be like. Now, I feel like these days there are enough fantastic promotions in every city that have built up enough equity and goodwill to overcome these types of negative opinions, and it's not so much an issue. But if what your promotion is doing is unprofessional and is giving professional wrestling a bad name in your area, next, under promotion, we have show, with slightly less importance. Now, this mostly goes to the people who are running your promotion: management, bookers, creative types, producers, head coaches, and all the rest. But really, even on the micro level, your matches and your wrestling on the individual smaller stage do have a part in this as well. If what you're putting onto a show is going to affect your promotion in the future, it's just not worth doing. You may feel like what you've put together as a booker or as a wrestler is the most creative, the most mind-blowing show that we will ever see in our lives, but if it's not going to push your promotion into the future, if it's going to hurt your future, maybe you've put too many things in one basket and that leaves you with nothing for the next couple of shows, might be time to think again about what you're putting out there. If the show doesn't really fit the vibe or image that you want your promotion to have, again, might be worth thinking about it. When we look under show, we get to match, and this is where it starts to get a little more specific to most professional wrestlers out there. Your match must support the show. I've spoken about it in detail in the past. I am going to have more videos on this in the future, but every match on the show has a specific role. There are ways that we should perform if we're in the opening match that will be different from if we're in the main event. There's ways that we might want to think about our match if we're right before intermission compared to after intermission. Now, if you want to go out there and hit 48 high spots and kick out of 3 finishes, go way over time, because that's going to get you an amazing response and provide a whole bunch of content that you can put into GIFs and put online, then you are not supporting the show. It's as simple as that. And if we burn the main event, if we burn the matches before and after us, people can leave those shows feeling underwhelmed, exhausted, never wanting to see another performance from your promotion again. Not to mention that you will come across as a selfish performer and anything but a team player. Really, if you're not thinking about the other matches on the card when you put your match together, you're just shooting yourself in the foot for future bookings. And then finally, under your match, we have first your opponent, And then lastly, yourself. Why should you hold yourself with the least amount of importance? The way I see it, it's like a relationship. And if both parties in a relationship are only thinking about number one, and they're going to be selfish in all of their actions, it's not going to be a happy relationship. If you put each other first and you're always out there to give rather than to take, things tend to work a little bit more harmoniously and you end up putting out the best result. When it comes to wrestling, when you're putting a match together and when you're performing, you should generally always think first, how can I make my opponent look good? How can I put them over? How can I get the best response for them? Because by doing that, you're then going to get a better response for yourself. And if you're both thinking about each other, you're going to put on the best match possible. Of course, this doesn't mean you should water down everything you do just to put 100% of focus and thought into your opponent, but you should really think about how can I make my opponent look great while still being true to who I am and who my character is in the ring. Really, when it comes down to it, it's just about being a team player and being selfless. Pro wrestling kind of takes a village to be at its best. So you can either be part of that village or you can be part of the problem. So that's the hierarchy, the way I know it. Of course, if you have your own opinions on what it is and what it should be, please drop it in the comments box below. As always, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and I'll see you next week for another episode of World-Beater Wrestling.
If you want to see more videos like this, click on the subscribe button, spread the word, and if you have any questions or requests for World-Beater Wrestling, don't be afraid to comment below.
Apparently, it's a really good time to start hammering on the wall.